pillow or maybe a folded towel, and that will work for us for today. I'll give you 30 seconds just to grab your pillow or maybe to fetch your towel, right? To fetch your towel right there for us to be able to start. Let me look for my timer. There we go. We have 30 seconds sitting now to find your towel, and let's get started. Don't forget your water. Remember I said if you want to take a lot of water during the day, at least take most of it during your workout, and we have 30 good minutes to do that. Also, another thing, do not feel limited by the number of repetitions we put in this session, because we are on a clock, but you are home and you can put in an hour. So if I say 15 and you want to do 30, feel free to do so. If I say 3 sets and you want to do 5 sets, feel free to do so until you feel that body is complying, or maybe just so you feel hot enough. So we'll start with our warm-up. We'll be jogging on the spot for 30 seconds, resting for 30 seconds, jogging on the spot for 30 seconds. Starting now. Jog on the spot. Until you hear the timer, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. 2 more seconds. And our time's up. Rest starts now. Rest starts now. Walk around. Rest starts now. Just walk around. Make that body feel good. You know, just waking up and getting all started with good energy and positive vibes. Yeah? And getting control of your day with choosing your money. Alright, starting now. We're doing that times 3, so jog, 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 jog. Jog. Jog, 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 jog. Keep jogging, keep jogging. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Going. Run, 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 run. Run, run, run. Run, 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 run. 5 more seconds. Running. And our time's up. Our time's up. So we have 30 seconds of rest. 30 seconds of rest starting now. 30 seconds of rest starting now. And my body is not complying. Alright. So we have 20 more seconds. Walk around. Walk around, walk around. Walk around. 10 more seconds. Walk around. 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds. We're almost there. We're almost there. Alright. Last set. You're on the spot. Set. Run. Run, run, run. Run. Keep going. Keep going. Run, 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 run. Keep going. And our time's up. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. Walk around, drink some water. Walk around. Walk around. All right. We have 3 more seconds of rest. So I'll demonstrate our next workout. All right. So we'll go down, put on your knees first. Put your knees like that. Hold here. Then lift yourself off the ground. So So this and this is 1. We're going to do 15. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1, hold your tummy. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, going 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well done. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. Walk around. Walk around, walk around. You have 15 more seconds. Take some water. And time's up. Time's up. All right. Back to your knees. Hold it there. Lift yourself up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold your tummy. 13, 14, 15. Well done. Well done. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Walk around, walk around. You're doing well so far. Your rest time starts now. Walk around, walk around. 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds to go. 10 more seconds to go. And time's up. Let's go. Back to your knees. Last set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well done. Well done. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Walk around. Walk around, walk around. We have 10 more seconds to go. 10 more seconds. And time's up. So, we're actually going to do push-ups, but with one leg raised up. So if you've never done ground push-up, it's okay, or if you find it harder on the ground, it's okay. You can get a wall somewhere and hold it like that, putting this leg up and do that. Alright. Just to the wall and back. Just to the wall and use your arms to push back. So you can do that while standing, or you can go down with this, raise one leg and do push-ups. Remember, the lower the surface you hold, the more pressure you put on your arms. So you can take a seat, for example, and put it there. Let's say this is too easy, but down is too hard. It's okay. You can still do here and put it here and do that. All right. So find something that works for you and let's do this together. Let me put this on the side. We're doing 10 reps on this leg, 10 reps on this side. That's one set. All right. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well done. I'll give you a 10-second rest before you go to the other leg. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well done. Well done, well done. If you push through the 10 repetitions, if you can do more than 10, well and good. Push through with it. The rest time starts now. Remember, we're doing a total of 20 push-ups and 10 on each leg on the raise and the support of the leg. So we have 15 more seconds to go. More seconds to go. I'm just sipping my water, feeling my triceps, you know, and of course my core from the workout we did. All right, next set. Remember I said if you're unable to do push-ups on the ground, you can just grab here and hold that and chest to the wall. If that is too easy, please put a chair or a stool down there and hold on the stool and go ahead and do it. But if that is still easy, definitely you need to graduate. Come here. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll give you 10 seconds to rest. You can massage those babies. 10 seconds to rest before we do the other side. Are you ready? I know you are. Let's go. The other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well done. Well done, well done. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Walk around. Your rest time starts now. Walk around, walk around. And your time's up. Time's up. Set number 3. Last set, set number 3. Are you ready? Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A few seconds rest before going to the other arm. That feels so good. Few seconds. Are you ready? Let's move. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well done, well done. If you pulled through with that for 10 repetitions on each arm, on each leg, you did an amazing job. All right, walk around, walk around. We're almost there. We're almost there. Then, after that, we'll go down and we'll be using the pillow. All right, time's up, time's up. So we'll go down here, you lie down, facing up. First, we'll do the chest press and then we'll do the crunches. So you're right here with your pillow, right? 1, 2, 3 and go. 1. Contract your chest. 2, because the pillow is light, make sure you deliberately contract. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now we're going to do the crunches. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1, take it up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well done, well done. We'll put a timer for a rest. And one thing when you're doing your crunches, please don't engage your neck, because then you will, have a stiff neck, and that's not what you want in this, after this workout. So try not to engage your neck. Try just to relax that neck and take all the weight to your core. Yeah, you have to do that deliberately, very deliberate. So all right, we have, and our time's up. Let's go. Set number 2. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1, contract your chest deliberately. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and of course 15. Well done. Let's put the rest timer. Well done. A rest starts now. Walk around. Before we go to the last set. Walk around. You're doing well so far. Very well. You're doing well. And our time's up. Let's go. Alright. Remember to deliberately contract because the weight is light. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, keep going. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well done, well done. Let me put a rest timer. Well done. Our rest time starts now. 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 Walk around. My hairband is not friendly today. Walk around, walk around. All right. We have 5 more seconds left. 5 more seconds. 5 more seconds left. Walk around. Our time's up. All right. So I'll demonstrate our next workout using the pillow. Hold the pillow right in front of you and take it to the front, shoulder level and up. 1, shoulder level and up. 2. All right. So we're going to do 20 and then immediately we'll draw 20 circles using our arms only, 20 circles. All right. We're going to do 3 sets of that. Remember, back straight, hold your frame tight. Don't loosen your frame and let your hands be firm straight. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 20. Hold your arms out straight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You know what I like about this workout? It totally burns. You feel your shoulders are ripping up. But that's the beauty of it because it's supposed to act like icing to our cake. Like everything that we've done today, right? Everything that we've done today, like this is the total absolute finisher. So your rest time starts now. Drink some water as you wait for the next set. We only have 2 more sets left. And I hope you're looking forward to meeting Peter in our next episode because the guy is amazing, as I had told you before, right? Let me pick my pillow. 5 more seconds to go. And there we go. Time's up. 1, 2, 3, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 5 more. 1, keep going. 2, keep going. 3, 4, and 20. There we go. Put it down. Massage those babies a little bit. Now let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with me. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. That felt so good. So let's get another 30 seconds of rest starting now before we hit our last set of the workout. You did amazing so far. You are fantastic. And again, this is our last workout of the day. Thank you for taking control of your day. Remember, my name is Eve of Eval Health and Fitness. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Yeah. All right. We have 5 more seconds left to our last set. 5 more seconds. And our time's up. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Keep going. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Well done. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yes, you made it. You killed that workout today, taking control of your day. Have a lovely day and have a blessed rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Akili, 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 akili. Let's chase the germs away. Let's chase the germs away by keeping our hands clean. And when you want to sneeze or when you want to cough, do it in your elbow. Let's practice sneezing into your elbow. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Achoo! Again, achoo! Yay! You did it! Germs, 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 they make us sick. Germs, germs, germs are not our friends. Germs, 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 they make us sick. Germs, 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 germs are not your friends. Nawa mikono sasa. Nawa mikono sasa. Nawa mikono sasa. Nawa mikono sasa. Unawajua mikono ni mojawapo ya njia bora zaidi ya kukukinga dhidi ya magonjwa na ya kukufanya uwe na afya kwa mwaka mzima.
When you buy a bar of Cadbury Dairy Milk chocolate, you can help change the story. That's because we will use part of the proceeds to donate milk to less fortunate children across our beautiful country. Let us come together and show the generous spirit that is inside of all of us. Cadbury Dairy Milk. There's a glass and a half in everyone.
The decision to open schools amid the pandemic is a difficult one.
Would you take your children to school if we open them tomorrow? Me, I would not take my grandchild near any school.
I think it's about time to call our children back to school.
We are therefore now asking our teachers to report back to school.
Swali ninalojiuliza mimi kama mwalimu, tunaenda kufanya nini?
Bado tunashtuka na mfumo wa serikali na matangazo la kufungua shule.
Hili janga la corona limefanya wazazi wengine wamepoteza kazi. Je, shule zikifunguliwa pesa zitatoka wapi?
If you have no fee, come back to the public school.
This is NTV.
Greetings, East Africa. This is your world, and today we focus on suicide prevention. The World Health Organization actually estimates that about 800,000 people die by suicide each year globally. And in Kenya, well, the country carries its own share of burden, especially among the youth, with the number one reason being depression. With this year's World Suicide Prevention Day themed Working Together to Prevent Suicide, this morning we shed light on how we can all be part of reversing this trend. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and this morning we not only hear from those with lived experiences, but also from the experts. Stay with us.
Attempted suicide is a punishable offense.
Suicide. Today we tackle an issue that is plaguing our nation, but we are not giving it the attention or creating prevention measures that it requires.
New York is a mecca of culture.
Famous South African designer presents his new spring-summer collection.
Huyu mtoto alikuwa analipiwa. Alitipiwa na akapona. Sasa hii alikuwa mzuri kabisa. Lakini sijui mafikiro yake.
We take a look at how suicide is a manifestation of the battle in the mind. And elsewhere, women in Turkey campaign against the senseless killings. Thank you for joining us on this broadcast. As I mentioned earlier, today we focus on suicide prevention. And speaking of which, our question of the day to you is, what is the greatest challenge in accessing mental health care where you are? What's the greatest challenge in accessing mental health care wherever you are? Talk to us. That hashtag is New Normal on our social media handles, and you can also reach us on that number at the bottom of your screen, or even text us. But before we get to the conversation, let's look at the numbers in as far as the effects of COVID-19 around the world is concerned. And speaking of which, this morning they stand at 31,775,937 people confirmed to have contracted the virus this far globally. Those who have totally recovered stands at 23,394,782, and we have lost 975,000 people, 465 around the world. In Kenya, those numbers, as per yesterday's briefing, stand at 37,218 Kenyans who have contracted the virus. This far, 24,147 of them have totally recovered, and we have lost 659 Kenyans to COVID-19. Well, those briefings continue on a daily basis to give us a perspective of how we are doing as a country, and again, as a country is also reeling for the second wave of COVID-19, it is imperative that you do take care and protect yourself from contracting this virus. Now, take a look at headlines across the world, and campaigners call on Saudi Arabia to investigate allegations of abusive and unsanitary conditions confronting migrants after some began talking to activists and international media using contraband cell phones.
In Gachanja prison, the situation is very bad because of there is no any facility which is helpful for human being to stay in some place. There is no toilet. Of course, there is the facility of toilet, but there is no water. And even the prisons are very small inside. Anyone is not allowed to go out. People are staying in that prison for more than 5 months. They were collecting the phone from the prison. When they asked them, why are you collecting our phone? We wanted to contact our family. So the Saudi prison guard tells them, this is a request of Ethiopian government. Ethiopian government is requesting this to collect the phone from you. I think this one is to silence the migrants, to not to speak to outer world.
Elsewhere, hundreds of elephants that died mysteriously in Botswana's famed Okavango Delta succumbed to cyanobacteria poisoning, according to the nation's wildlife department. The landlocked southern African country boasts the world's largest elephant population, estimated at around 130,000. More than 300 of the pachyderms have mysteriously died since March, with their tusks intact, ruling out poaching.
There is absolutely no reason to believe that there was human involvement in these mortalities. What is clear is that there was these water, the pens were clearly the focus of the mortalities. We took tests. The tests show that there were these cyanobacteria which potentially could produce some of these toxins which are known to affect wildlife and also livestock. So this is not a phenomenon that was just seen now. It is something that happens quite a lot when there are these environmental changes. So at this point in time, we certainly cannot talk about any human involvement.
We know the elephant to really be the only animal, for example, that is drinking below the surface of the water. And where the depth is a challenge, it clearly shows the possibility of this species being able to suck the silt, which is really where the growth of this cyanobacteria is, majority of the time that involved. But all in all, having isolated this going forward, we clearly know that the mortality, because it had stopped at the time when the pens were drying off, we are going forward going to monitor the situation and then come up with interventions to prevent further mortalities in the next season.
Now meet with Ladumon Zokolo, South African designer who presents to us his new Spring or Summer 21 collection by Maxoha Africa during New York Fashion Week.
The decision that always makes us associate ourselves with New York is that it is our biggest market outside of South Africa. New York is a mecca of culture. When I say so, I mean hip-hop culture, film, fashion, and a lot of subculture that influence us. even though we are going through a bad year, we did well from our online store. Our sales tripled. We even had to create 20 jobs in the last 2 months. And we also opened up a new boutique in Cape Town. Instead of cutting down our collection, we added more pieces. We introduced more patterns because I felt like people want to have things that are positive to look forward to. I always try with my collections to introduce unisex pieces. In our case, like things like shawls are some of the items that do very most for us, because people with shawls, people can wear them as a head wrap. They can wear them over their shoulders or around their waist, or use as a picnic fabric. Like they are super versatile.
Amazing work there. Now, the president of the National Committee for the Salvation of the People of Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta, celebrates on public television the 60 years of the country's independence and wishes to use this anniversary as a new start, while retired Colonel and former Minister of Defense Bando has been designated as president of a transition before a return of civilians at the head of a country. Colonel Goïta said it is a feast of memory and hope, a memory of a sacrifice made by the founding fathers and the ideals they stood for, and hope for a better tomorrow so that people will be proud of the legacy we leave them. He added, let's place this celebration under the sign of a new beginning, new opportunities that we are giving ourselves to make Mali grow in confidence, regain social cohesion and solidarity. Change is now. And to a focus of the day's discussion, on September 10th, the country joined the rest of the world in marking the World Suicide Prevention Day, a day that was marked with low-key events following social distancing precautions against the spread of COVID-19 virus. Lois Wangoi shares a personal story of a lady who is on the path of recovery from a life plagued with thoughts of suicide.
41-year-old Grace Wanjiro has suffered from depression and is managing bipolar disorder type 2. The weight from these burdening conditions has almost forced her to give in, having tried to commit suicide twice. She tracks the source of her troubles to the separation of her parents as a 7-year-old girl.
Kutoka sasa hapo kukosa hiyo mapenzi ya mama, kumkosa huelewi. Nilianza sasa kufanya mapenzi na watoto. Nikakuwa sasa nimepata attention. Sasa ikakuwa ni kama nimekuwa sex addict.
The firstborn of 5, Grace, first tried to commit suicide after a romantic relationship she was in got rocky. The second attempt was when she became a mother. She says she got anxious on the future of her child.
Nilichoka. Nikasema sasa hapa penye nimefika sasa, hapa sasa ndio ndipo. By that time, hakuna mwenye alikuwa anaelewa nini naendelea. So mambo ilikuwa tunafanyika tu.
While it is easy to dismiss the reason given as excuses, Grace's younger sister, Triza Modhoni, took time to understand her sister. She even went back to school to study counseling and psychology with a sharp focus on mental health illnesses.
You start seeing someone having behavior that is not their own. They start drinking too much, they start sleeping too much, they start overindulging. So let's just watch out.
Attempted suicide is a punishable offense, and now the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights is calling upon the legislature to decriminalize attempted assisted suicide and embrace a preventive and holistic approach to address suicide.
But for men, they will self-medicate with weed, they will self-medicate with alcohol, with affairs. They will try all other things to avoid dealing with the reason they are depressed.
For Grace Wanjiro, she is brave enough to share her story and hopeful for a brighter tomorrow. She serves as an example of how far a little bit of understanding of mental health issues helps those dealing with it. Lois Wangoi, NTV, in the county of Uasin Gishu.
That is the focus of our discussion this morning, suicide prevention. And to help us understand more about this, Dr. Linda Nyamute, consultant psychiatrist, with us in studio. Peter Waweru, who is an entrepreneur, joining us in the other studio. He's also a mental health advocate. Quinta Wambolua, who is the founder for Girls Africa Mental Health Organization, and also a mental health advocate. She comes from Mombasa. Anya Buti also joins us. She is a caregiver to somebody who actually died by suicide, and she will be bringing us that perspective from where she sits. She joins us from Taita Taveta. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And I'll start off with you, Daktari. I mean, as we talk about suicide prevention, we definitely have to stop and think about what the causes are before we can find the solution. So what are the causes?
So basically, there's not a particular cause, but there are things that increase one's risk of dying by suicide. So the most common being a mental illness, and depression being one of the most common mental illnesses that can predispose one to having thoughts of suicide and eventually dying by suicide. Other mental illnesses, we have bipolar and alcohol and drug addiction, among many, many others. Other things are depending on the environment that you've come from. So a very stressful environment, for example, people in abusive environments, whether physically abusive, emotionally abusive, this sort of tends to create a lot of stress and a lot of pressure for the individual, which may push them to limits. Personality as well. People with impulsive personalities are also very bound to have, create a space where if they don't have healthy coping mechanisms, they may take a stressful situation and create that space and die by suicide, rather.
Yeah,
yes.
I know we are all trying to tiptoe around the right terminology in as far as expressing dying by suicide is concerned. And why are we doing so? Because there's a time we called it committing suicide. Now we say dying by suicide.
Yeah.
Why are we changing the terminology?
Gladys, the main thing I think is we are really moving in a space where we're trying to remove the stigma around suicide. And when you say committing suicide, you're actually making it a crime. You commit crimes. So decriminalizing suicide is one of the first things that will help us reduce the stigma around suicide and people being able to seek out and reach for help when they're having suicidal thoughts. So when you say committing suicide, you're saying you're actually doing a crime.
And yet it is a health issue, and we'll get into that further into the discussion. But even as we talk about this, we have been in a very stressful environment. We are in the face of a pandemic. A lot has been changing, a lot of things happening around us. From your experience in your practice, have you seen cases of death by suicide going up?
Yes, we have actually. Sorry about that. Mostly with our patients who've been on follow-up. This has been a very stressful time for them, considering for many people, like the lockdown, being confined within environments that may not be too healthy for some. For some people, they may have the luxury of having a very healthy family support system. But for some, that family support system is where all the stress stems out and all the pressure and all the negativity. So now being confined into that space is like compounding everything else, now leading to suicidal, more and more suicidal thoughts. So we're having a number of patients actually having more and more attempts. But it's just the hope that with our treatment is they're going to, you know, push further. I mean, it's all about hope.
Okay, all right. And speaking of which, that the COVID-19 pandemic would have an impact on all of us is something that we are all coming to terms with. And the last we heard was actually of a Catholic catechist who took his life, and everyone was left in shock when this actually seemed to have happened to him. Of course, everyone wondering why this man of the cloth would actually take his life. He came from Kisii. This is his story.
When crisis and loss strike, recommendations by the Ministry of Health fly right out of the window. Social distance remains a suggestion that is hard to master during times of deep grief. 63-year-old David Gisemba is a man of great standing. In his living room, a picture of him in his robes tell of his position in the community.
Ndugu yangu ndiye ananifuata. Ninamjua sababu alikuwa mwalimu wa kanisa.
And it is this honor and the moral authority that he commands that has people at a loss as to why his life had to come to such a tragic end.
Walikuwa wamesimama barabarani na mafundi walikuwa wanataka kupasua mbao. Ingawaje nilikuwa kwa umbali, sikuongea na yeye, nilikuwa na haraka. Niliona kama alikuwa na hali yake ilikuwa safi.
Kutaka kuthibitisha ni nini kiini hacha kimeleta jambo hili bado hatujalijua. Japo kuna kuanga na issues za nyumba ambazo ni domestic, bara tunajua kwamba hazingeleta hadi kiwango hichi cha mzee kujinyonga.
A rope on the ground depicts a desperate cry of help that went unanswered and even more frantic efforts to rescue the man. But news of his death will not be as silent. The loss will be felt by the entire community of Nyoero village in Bonyagatanyi, Kisii County.
Nikapata mihang. Mimi nikadhani inside wameweka kamba. Nikakimbia nikakata kamba. Nikidhani babangu ako hai. Kumbe babangu alikuwa ameaga kitambo.
Gisemba's body was taken by the police to a mortuary in Kisii town as funeral arrangements kick off. The cause of Gisemba's death remains a mystery. However, similar incidences show a pattern that is pointing at a crisis in regards the mental health of the people at a time when interactions remain at a minimum. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
A story that puts into perspective that everyone is susceptible to mental illness, so we need to stop, have these conversations and see how best we can be able to prevent suicide. And let me bring in those that have lived experiences. Peter Wawero, you have a lived experience where you have attempted suicide. Talk about your journey and how you got there.
Well, it's quite a story because it runs back to 2002 when I joined high school. That was in Form 2. I think at that time I felt rejected because I never used to get visited in school, and that used to kind of get into my mind so much because my brothers are there. I'm the last born in a family of 5. And where I was schooling is just near where I stay, about like 20 kilometers from home, but it was a boarding school. So I kind of had an expectation of being visited when I see my mates are being visited during visiting days at school. But for me, I spent my entire high school years without being visited, and that kind of created that feeling of rejection, which ended up into depression. So I was diagnosed in 2016 January. And, you know, having to live with it from 2002 to 2016, so many things came in because I never knew what I was battling, so I ended up into being an alcoholic and drug and substance abuse. And most of the time I would see things are not moving my way. The option was always me ending my life, because most of the time I'd feel I'm not worthy, because if I don't matter to other guys, then there's no need of me being alive. So I did my first attempt in 2008. Again, that one was not successful. I did the second one in 2011, and that for 2011 it was after I lost my mom. I couldn't deal with that situation, you know, with the other things piled up in my head. So I did the second attempt, but the most recent, which was on 2015, December 29th, that one, I think I had planned it so well, and it was supposed to be a success. But this, again, did not go through. So my issue, actually, I find not talking much about the suicide, but the depression aspect of it and the anxiety that I've been battling for so long without knowing. And now the coping mechanism that I took, which was not, again it was not an ideal way of dealing with it, going into alcoholism and drug and substance abuse, also took a toll on me.
Okay, so you were diagnosed with anxiety and depression?
Yes.
Okay, now let's hear also from Quinta Wambolwa, your journey. How does that look like?
Well, it's been quite a journey because I'm a survivor of cyberbullying. I remember in 2018 when I was just from rehab and I was speaking of my experiences. I came back to school in campus at the Technical University of Mombasa. I started speaking of my experience with depression and anxiety, and I wanted to help others who are going through it. So immediately media got attention of what I was doing, and before I realized it, my story was on the newspaper, the Daily Nation. The following day, my ex-boyfriend then released my nudes to the public. So again, I became so suicidal a number of times because these were lesbianism clips, and it was so embarrassing. Coming from a very religious background, my parents had to see all that, my school teachers had to see all that. It was so embarrassing. I became suicidal again, but I really had a support system. They were there for me, so they really supported me throughout the process of healing, and of course, I became more stronger. And I can say that mental health is real, and we need to support those who are battling. Cyberbullying kills because a number of times I became suicidal.
Okay, you said you came from rehab before the cyberbullying happened. Why were you in rehab in the first place?
I was a drug addict, and I remember I wanted to commit suicide at Nyali Bridge. So having been heartbroken, and I didn't know how to handle that at the time when I was still a third year in school, my coping mechanism was drugs, and I really had invested myself, and I didn't see the reason of living a good life anymore. And so I found myself just using drugs, and one day I'm from school, I'm going home, and I'm at the bridge in Nyali, at Nyali Bridge, and the voices in my head kept telling me, why are you leaving, Quinta? Why do you think you need to leave? You know, before I realized it, people were already around me and they were so mad at me. So they took me to the hospital. It's called Mombasa, Nyali Bridge, Mombasa Hospital. And so that's when I realized I was sick mentally. And I had never heard a word mental health. So that was the first time being told I am sick mentally, I have depression. So I was diagnosed. And then for it to be diagnosed, I was actually referred to Nairobi at the Kenyatta referral. So that's where I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety and some PTSD.
Now, just listening to both Quinta and Peter, one thing that comes out is that for a long time they did not know what they were dealing with. They took up ways of coping that really exacerbated the mental illness. Talk about how a lot of these conditions normally come, disguised as something else.
I think that's a very good thing because we're trying to also advocate for mental health awareness because a lot of people don't know what mental illness looks like until it's that man by the roadside running naked and abusing all the children or something strange like that. But mental illness, especially depression, anxiety, they manifest in very simple ways. Being overly sad for a very long period of time, for example. And this is not the sadness where you wake up and you're like, okay, today I'm feeling bad. It's not one bad day.
It's not the blues.
No, it's not a blue. It's not a Monday. I'm not feeling like going to work sort of a thing. It's prolonged sadness for a very prolonged period of time. Mostly we give it 2 weeks. But this is the kind of sadness that makes you not even want to do the things that you'd normally love to do. So you find you like reading, you find you like talking to people, but then now you want to stay by yourself. You want to just probably maybe cuddle up in your blanket from morning to evening. You don't want to go to work. You don't want to go anywhere and socialize with people. It can also interfere with sleep. Simple things like eating as well. You look at food, you stare at it the whole day, and you have no appetite, basically. And these are things we take for granted very often, but they can be subtle manifestations. So most of the time we wait until it's gotten so bad to the point where now someone is attempting suicide or having thoughts of suicide to actually realize that there's something off. But once the behavior starts changing in such a way where you're seeing someone is becoming very withdrawn or taking alcohol or drugs more than they normally would, or someone who's never taken marijuana, for example, is now suddenly the expert at it. So that changing behavior out of the blues without any reason for it could be an indicator that something is not quite right.
Okay, now both Peter and Quinta were diagnosed with the depression and anxiety. You've talked about depression. What about anxiety? What is it about it that couples itself with depression a lot more than other mental illnesses?
Yeah, it basically goes back to the chemicals in the brain that are usually off balance when one is having depression. They can also be abnormal, if I may use the word, when one is also having anxiety. So at times you find anxiety may start and then depression follows, or the other way around. But most of the time it's the depression and then the anxiety.
Okay. All right. And I'd like to hear also from a caregiver's point of view. And Anne Yabuti joins us from Taita Taveta. And you lost your husband as he died by suicide. He was also diagnosed with depression. How did you get to the diagnosis?
A friend of mine passed on in 2017. And that friend, we were high school roommates. And so in finding out what happened to her, I read about that she had passed on because she had overdosed on her meds. So when I was reading about the cause of death, I realized that the symptoms that she had shown is exactly what my husband was showing. He was always very sad. He didn't want to go anywhere. He didn't want to see anyone. He would wake up in the morning and tell you, I'm not going to work today. I'm writing my resignation letter to TSC, so please tell them I'm not going to work. And he didn't want to play with the kids anymore. He didn't want to, he was a talkative person. He was phlegmatic, yes, but he could talk. Then all of a sudden, he does not want to see anyone. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. So that story made me relate with what I was seeing at home. And so I sought help from Taita Taveta. Unfortunately, there is no psychiatrist in Taita Taveta County. So I was referred to psychiatrists, nurses, who told me they can't give a diagnosis, and they referred me to Mombasa to go see a psychiatrist. So when I went to the psychiatrist and we gave those symptoms, he now diagnosed him with acute depressive psychosis, and he gave him medication that he took for some time. And when we were trying to find out where it came from, we were supposed to look for the trigger for the same. And so we came across a traumatic event that he had at work. And so because of that, it triggered depression for him. Yeah, that's how I knew that he was sick.
Okay, and how long after the diagnosis did you lose him to suicide?
He was diagnosed in October 2017. He took his medication for 3 months, and he seemed to pull through in January. But in January, he went back to work, the same place where he had faced the traumatic experience. And so he relapsed. With the relapse, he went down again, and the job restrictions were changed, but it looks like it was a little bit concentrated at the time. So he became, I think it was cathartic. He could not get out of bed. He could not eat. He could not do anything, not even take a shower. And so you wake up in the morning, you had planned the previous day that you're going to work, and then he would tell you, I am not going anywhere. And so you have to cancel your work duties that day and tell them, I'm sorry, I can't come in. I have an emergency. And it continued like that. He was admitted in a hospital in Mombasa for a whole week, somewhere in May, April, May. And so when he came back, we had visits still, but in June, we went for visits. He was given medication. When we came back and he was on medication, he was given a 2-week, 14 days off from work. And it was during those 14 days that he passed. So approximately 9 months after the diagnosis, he took his life.
Okay, now that is a detailed account of Anne's experience with her husband. And in this case, you would hear somebody who actually already had help. But at some point, something triggered him to actually go through with a suicide attempt. What exactly are we looking at in this case?
See what happens in many cases when someone has been having depression and suicidal thoughts for a very long while, but they've been not having the energy, basically. This is someone who can barely move out of bed, doesn't want to do anything. So once the treatment starts, they regain their energy. And if the thoughts are still severe enough, now they have the energy to go through with the actual act. So that's what usually happens. We get a patient who's been in hospital, we've just discharged them, then 24 hours later you're being called that they died by suicide, sorry. So they have now found the energy now to do it, especially if during the treatment period the suicidal thoughts were not adequately addressed. Or they were not well managed, for example.
Okay, so how then can we be assured that every patient that seeks help also sort of has somebody or a system that follows up to ensure when they're outside the health center that they do not fall back into that cycle of suicidal thoughts?
This is where family, or rather the support system, it could be family, it could be friends, this is where they come in. Because even with the hospitals, there's the much follow-up we can do, but there's now like the daily follow-up. You see, that's a bit of an overstretch for our healthcare system. So this is where the family comes in, where they have to sort of be supportive. See, someone, once they have been diagnosed with suicide, has had a suicidal attempt, has been admitted in hospital, the family becomes very confused. Like, did we fail? Is there something we're not doing right for you? We've given you, especially if it's a child, for example. Is there what have we not given you? We've provided you with everything. We've taken you to the best school. So they're feeling a bit let down. They're feeling a bit confused. So they also need to be put in the treatment program to also understand what this person is going through, so that when they go home, what are the signs they should watch out for? What are the ways in which they can help them in case the person mentions that they're feeling suicidal? To not be a case where they approach, the patient comes and tells them that I'm feeling this type of way, and they're there saying, but you've just come from hospital, go take your medication. No, that is not an answer. Someone who's reaching out for help would want to hear. So it's basically being incorporated in the healthcare plan so that they can understand first and then also know how best do they support them, but also how not to lose themselves in the care that they are giving.
And speaking of which, in July of this year, if you do remember, police had a difficult time containing curious onlookers in Machakos County's Kaumoni village as they retrieved the bodies of a couple suspected to have died by suicide. Their repeated pleas for the crowd to maintain safe distances went unheeded as the onlookers crowded into the doorway of the room where the couple was found hanging. 19-year-old Susan Ndeto and her 28-year-old lover Dennis Pius reportedly traveled to the village from Nairobi. Their bodies were discovered by the girl's mother, who grew concerned when her calls went unanswered. According to neighbors, the couple showed no outward signs of distress, and there is a growing concern over reported rise in cases of self-harm, and the youth have been encouraged to speak up in times of trouble.
Mtu akiwa na matatizo asijitoe uhai, sababu imekuwa kila wakati kujitoa. Naomba kama kuna shida yote ya kinyumbani, kifamilia, waseme ndio wasuluhishwe.
Speaking of which, the people around you might not know it, but the person who's going through the experience is also encouraged to talk about their challenges. Quinta, were you able to express the challenges you were going through?
Yes, naturally I'm a speaker, and so it was so easy for me to speak out of my issues. So I started the talk shows, Coffee with Quinta, where I've now engaged other people to open up. It's more like a safe space where people would come, share, connect, and heal. Because I believe in the power of sharing our stories. So by doing so myself, I allowed others to also do the same. So for me, it was quite easy.
Okay, so by the time you went for rehab, did you go there out of your own volition, or you were nudged to go there?
The doctors here at Mombasa referred me to Nairobi, and at Nairobi, I was with my cousin who works at Kenyatta Hospital. So it was really much easy because I felt like I had someone who understood me and who was there for me. So that is family.
And they understood you. They wanted to be there with you. Did they understand your battle?
Yes. In fact, them understanding my battle made them to help me the best, because where I was coming from, I had just lost everything. You know, I had been in this relationship for 8 years. So losing it was more like grieving. Yeah, so they understood where I was coming from, and it was now easier for them to help me cope. There was medication. I was put under some medication. There was a pastor who used to come and we just pray, sing, you know, because I think when you're having suicidal thoughts, there is a bit of you, the inside of you, the hope in you that really wants to be alive again. So just getting connected with the higher power really helped me a lot.
Okay, but now the flip side, are there people who just did not get what it is that you were faced with?
So many of them. When I came back to school, before I went to rehab, I was extroverted. I was that outgoing girl, you know, I was all over all the functions in school. And then all of a sudden, when I came back to school, I retrieved. I became introverted. I didn't want to, nothing interested me at all. So not everyone really got it. Some would say she's been heartbroken, she's broke, she can't maintain the lifestyle. You know, yeah, it's true I couldn't maintain, but again, I was having so many battles and I just wanted to have a time of myself to find myself. Because after the heartbreak, I knew it was now time for me to find myself. So I started the work. I started to do the work of finding myself, and it wasn't easy because the environment at school could not really allow me be me, because there is the Quinta that people knew before, and then this is a totally new Quinta that people do not relate to. People do not understand her. So quite a lot of them didn't get along with me.
And after that, you now face the cyberbullying you talked about. At that point, are there people who understood that there was a connection between your mental illness at that point and even attempt of suicide?
wow, that for me really broke me, because just when I featured on the newspaper, the Daily Nation, on the 18th of November, 2018, that was like, I felt good, because now people were recognizing what I was doing in the community with my NGO, that I had started to help other women and girls who are going through abuse. So when I was cyberbullied, when my nudes were sent to the public, that was a blow. It was a trigger to all my mental illness. I felt embarrassed. And you see, at the time, my name was, it was in the public of what I was doing. So anybody already knew, if you hear mental health, you hear Quinta. So now you hear Quinta, you hear nudes, or you see her nudes. So my image was really, I really was disrespected. I felt embarrassed at home in my village, because you can imagine what it is like, people in the village seeing your nudes. You know, home never felt home again, because I really was embarrassed at school as well. So life was crazy, and people didn't know. My parents were there for me, and I really thank them for them. They gave me the support, but I still had so many battles inside me. I felt like a failure. I sometimes felt like I shouldn't have done what I had started, but those who believed in me, those who saw what I was doing, kept on. They kept on telling me, we believe in you. So those who believed in me were there for me. They were like, Quinta, you got this. Go, you got this. So that was what kept me going. And until now, this is what is keeping me going. I work with the survivors of gender-based violence here in Mombasa at Tononoka Social Hall. We have a situation room, and I get to handle so many cases of girls who've been abused physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And having gone through it myself, I'm now at a better position to help a number of women to just find themselves, because the key is finding yourself. If I would have listened to the external noises, I can tell you for a fact, I wouldn't be here. But I had to follow what was the inside me. So just defining myself and trying to work on my trauma and just deal with it one day at a time.
Okay, now to another aspect of suicide that has come up in statistics and recent conversations. And if you can remember, in June of 2019, our very own editor at NTV, Sheila Sendeo, spoke to families who have suffered loss to suicide. Notably, most of these victims are male, both young and old, and research backs the case studies, stating the suicide rate for men is 3 times higher than that of women. Depression is a leading cause of suicide, and experts say most patients who have sought help have actually won the grueling battle in their mind. Here's a snippet of what she gathered.
Every year, 7,000 people in the country find themselves in this dungeon, in the cusp of light and shadow, where death is a cradle. They have their pain and their reasons, but their footprints are marked with so much devastation, so many questions. On the threshold of a ghost of a home lies the unhallowed ground where the remains of a battered and broken 13-year-old Clinton Mwangi lies. The final chapters of Clinton Mwangi's short life story were written here. A story penned with the ink of affliction, right until the last moments he stepped into the dark.
Walikuwa wanafanya hide and seek. Sasa wale walikuwa wanacheza na yeye, walisi ndio walienda wapi? Kumbe ameshikwa nayo mtu amepeleka kwa nyumba yake na mtolea kesi. Hawezi sema hata nduru. Akafanywa ile chenye alikuwa anafanyiwa. Kutoka siku hiyo chichi ndio alianza kuchange.
Huyu mtoto alikuwa anaripiwa. Alitipiwa na akapona. Saa hii alikuwa mzuri kabisa. Lakini sijui mafikiro yake.
But he isn't the only one isolated in his own pitch darkness. Small folds of people culled from different homes around Ngano village in Nyahururu gather in a compound cloaked in a gloom that mirrors the day's weather. Gerald Mwangi's lifeless body was found swinging from outside his home in Kinoo. Those who knew him say he was always full of life, more of the sun than the shade. But for a man who made a living off making people laughed away his last moments and his cry for help. His suicide note was hardly a chronicle of his scathing self-loathe, self-criticism, and a growing desperation that his friends and family only found out about later. They still struggle to reconcile his inner and outer life.
Hiyo posti kwanza kumpigia simu wako mteja. So ni msali alikuwa anapenda jokes sana. So mimi kwa upande wangu nilikuwa naona labda huyu jamaa anaweza kuwa na joke, lakini after one day kesho yake nikajua hii kitu inakuwa hii kitu iko serious. Shoot ilivyoisha siku ya mwisho aliniambia alikuwa na problems za nyumbani hizi. Ananiambia Bullet niko na problems hivi na hivi but ile kitu ilifanya akafanya kitu kama nadhani hakushare ile kitu ilikuwa inamsumbua kwa roho yake, but angeshare na vijana kama sisi at least kuna venye tungesaidiana.
Mildred Nekesa and husband George Ndiema were expecting their 7th child, but a few days to her due date, he killed himself. He left her no explanation.
Hatukuwa na shida yoyote wakati ambapo aliniacha. Karatasi tuliopata ni yenye alikufa nayo akiwa ameandika madeni yake.
We need to treat every suicide thought, action, word, anything with the seriousness it deserves. With suicide, you really never know who is going to make good their threat.
4 or 5 people who commit suicide are depressed at the time of their deaths. But there are other causes too, such as bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, and alcohol and other substance abuse. 5 of 6 people with mental health disorders do not seek treatment. But an audit of the Ministry of Health by the Auditor General also paints a picture of state neglect, even as mental health disorders continue to afflict more citizens every year. There's only one psychologist for every 4.6 million Kenyans. Only 25 of the 47 counties have psychiatric units. The suicide rate for men is 3 times higher than that of women. Most men build a facade to mask the clutches of darkness. It's not every day that men speak about mental health struggles. Society shames and invalidates mental illness. But these men who have struggled with chaotic thoughts, the fear, the anxiety, the constant hopelessness, are among those who've overcome the stigma, the main cause of the silence and the lack of awareness.
Battle in the Mind by Shilan Sendeo that came to us mid last year, and it puts to perspective the struggle, especially amongst the male gender. Peter, you represent that gender. Was it a struggle for you to share your challenges with your loved ones?
Yes, it was. There was there's no safe space for men to talk about their issues. Most of the time you'll try to reach out, but it will be dismissed. Like for my case, most of the time it was dismissed with, this is not you, it's alcohol speaking. Even in my 3 attempts, I think I tried to reach out, but most of the time I was told you're trying to seek attention. Peter, you deal with your alcoholism, there's no safe space for men to speak about their issues. That is the biggest problem.
Okay, and by the time you're getting the diagnosis and now on your journey of getting better, who are the people who've walked with you?
After the last attempt, I think I did mention I went unconscious and I found myself in the hospital. And during that time when I was in the mental ward, I found that one person, because all it takes is one person to listen to you. And actually found that one person who came, a lady, and we kind of bonded, and she was patient with me to get me to that safe space where I can speak about my issues. And after getting to that, that's when it was recommended I need to go to a rehabilitation and also to get medication for my condition, the depression and everything. So it was only one person who managed to crack it and just give me that listening ear. That's when I got help.
Okay, now apart from people being receptive, why are you also feeling maybe I shouldn't talk about this because people will look at me differently?
The stigma that comes with it, especially with men, you'll be seen as a failure. I was also always afraid of that, because the moment I would share and maybe have conversations with myself, I'll take a recount of everything that has been happening in my life, and I feel like if I share this issue with people or with my friends, I'm going to be ashamed. And so that is the main thing that kept me out of speaking about my issue, the stigma that will come with it. Especially being a person who has come, like the second suicide attempt, I did it in public. I tried to cut my veins so that I can bleed out. So that is something that was in the public domain. Yeah, and also that was dismissed with me seeking attention. So I kind of nearly shut. I couldn't speak about my issue again.
We hear you, Peter, and I'm sure you speak on behalf of very many people who walk in your shoes. Now, we're about to take a short break on Your World, but we had asked you earlier on the question of the day, what is the greatest challenge in accessing mental health care where you are? And at this point, I see some people asking, if I needed to talk to somebody, who do I go to? Which number can I call? Daktari, maybe you would tell us, if somebody was having a struggle with suicide thoughts, where would they reach out to? Like, where would I pick up the call and somebody at the other side of the call will help me?
We do have hotlines that are coming up. I know Red Cross has one where you can just call and talk to someone. There's also a few organizations that have come up to make that service possible, where you can just call and someone will just walk through you what emotions you're going through at that time. But also, any hospital that you call should be able to offer you that psychological first aid at that particular moment.
Okay. Quinta, in Mombasa, do you have a hotline that people can actually call and get help?
Yes, UN Women is supporting us through telecounseling, and we have a toll-free number. So there are different organizations, Action Aid, the county, Reinvent, so many organizations joined hands to have the toll-free number, and we have it here. Maybe, can I read it out?
Please do, please do.
So the toll-free line in Mombasa is 0800720587. That is the toll-free line. And then for the text is 21094. When you call that number, we, the psychologists, we get to counsel you, hear you out. And if you need to see us, we are at Tononoka Social Hall at the Situation Room. You're not alone, so feel free to speak to any psychologist. We are here for you.
Thank you, Quinta, for sharing that. Again, let me repeat that toll-free line in Mombasa, 0800720587. And we'll also be getting that toll-free number for the Red Cross, even as we help more people get the help they need in as far as their mental health is concerned. We take a short break on Your World. We'll be back.
It looks like Luciana is sticking her nose into things that are none of her business.
This isn't the right time.
He was always after me and everything was just going great. Until Marta got in the way, just as she did with your father.
If there's anything that concerns my children, you have to tell me about it. Do you understand?
Excuse me for interfering, but if Luciana didn't...
But still, she doesn't have any right to keep from me anything that has to do with my children.
Yes, but...
I don't even want to think about how much trouble she's in.
Luciana, the fact that I can't be with you doesn't mean that I can just forget everything I feel for you.
Are you alright, Madam Lillian? Is anything wrong? It's nothing you can fix. Nobody has the cure for love problems.
Along Came Love, in association with Blue Band Peanut Butter.
Top dressing tea. Avoid top dressing during heavy rains as it'll be eroded away. Weeding should be done before top dressing to ensure they don't regrow.
More than 500,000 farmers in Kenya can have easy access at affordable packs of 1 kg to 50 kg across major agro dealers. Farmers who have used Mavuno fertilizers have realized 30% more yield. Please feed your crop and soil with the best fertilizers for future prosperity. Call us today and learn how Mavuno fertilizers is helping in increasing food production in Africa.
Best quality KEBS certified steel. TMT steel bars. Produced from the most modern machines and technology. Reliable and with the highest strength. Suitable for all types of construction. That is, high-rise buildings, bridges, houses and roads.
Look for the Devki mark on a wider selling reinforcement, twisted and TMT rebars, which are KBS certified and have the diamond mark of quality. Devki Steel, Kenya's most trusted steel company.
It's time to kickstart your smart and give your brain a mega boost with DSTV. There's oodles of mind-blowing channels for kids young all together now. To get your knowledge workout, get connected to DSTV.
It is your world. My name is Gladys Gachanja. This morning we talk about suicide prevention. Remember, we are within the Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and the day this is marked is actually September 10th. And before we get to the intricacies of the day, earlier on, before we took a break, we were talking about the challenges of men having to, get support when it comes to mental illness. At times, it is a societal stereotype that men do not have challenges such as this, and at times men feel that it will probably make them feel like a weaker gender if they talked about their mental illness. And I'd like to hear from Anya Buti. Your husband was diagnosed with depression and he took his life. And in that journey, what are the struggles you saw him go through?
The first time he told people that he was sick, he was asked, "Are you not married? Don't you have children? Don't you have a job? So what's your problem?" Man up, as in people were telling him, "You're successful as success can be, so what is wrong with your problem? Or rather, what's wrong with you?" And then another thing is, I want to appreciate Quinta and Peter. I must admit, these are uncharted waters. People don't talk about these things. And the moment we talk about them, we are told we are attention seekers. For example, I wrote some posts about the experiences on Facebook. And the first thing I was asked is, "Anne, are you sure you're okay?" people think you're seeking attention anytime you want to talk about mental health, or you're grieving, or there's a problem with you. It's not the same as when we talk about malaria, about when we talk about diabetes, cancer. People are willing to listen to you, and it's a big thing to talk about it. But when you're talking about mental health, especially the patient, they're always shut down and told, I think you're doing fairly enough, so please stop talking about it. So that was the first reaction he got.
Okay. And when he passed on, what were the reactions?
Thank you for asking that. I had a friend who came to me and asked me, did he really love you? To mean that if he loved me enough, then he would not take his life. Over time, people, the first reaction you get when someone is mentally ill, especially, is their domestic troubles. I was married to my husband for 10 years, and fairly so, it was a very, very good marriage. So when someone is sick mentally, the first line of question is, what problems are you having? Are you sure maybe you don't have domestic issues? And I feel people should understand, you don't have to have domestic problems for you to be sick. You don't have to have domestic problems for you to have diabetes, for example. You don't have to have domestic problems for you to suffer hypertension. As in, why is it singled out that anytime you're mentally ill, then your wife should be the one stressing you out, the children should be the one stressing you out? I like Dr. Linda said, it's just chemical imbalances in the brain sometimes, and it's not necessarily that someone had problems and that's why they had an issue. And the other reaction I have found is the death certificate has cause of death, asphyxia into brackets, suicide. So when I take that death certificate to any office, be it TSC to claim anything, be it NSSF, be it maybe I'm even looking for something for my children, the moment someone says suicide, they treat you differently. And I'm expected to give an explanation to a total stranger why my husband died by suicide. And I bring the document to your office, I place it on your table. I expect you to serve me as a Kenyan citizen who deserves service. And then you ask me, this was a very young man. Were you having problems at home? I'm like, really, as in, this is my death certificate. Just because it has the tag suicide on it, I'm expected to explain to you, a person I don't even know, what problems were there. And the first line of defense is that you seem to have stressed him out, and that's why he took his life. The other reaction is people who die by suicide were not religious enough. People assume this person did not know God, and so if they really knew God, they would have trusted him to deal with their problems. I keep telling anyone who cares to listen, by the time someone ties a noose so that they can hang themselves, or they gulp down those pills, can you imagine how numb that person feels? You cannot do that in your right frame of mind. I cannot go right now and pick tabs that I know are likely to cause me harm, and I gulp them down. I cannot tie a rope somewhere and hang myself in my right frame of mind. So by the time this person goes ahead and does it, it's important for people to realize you're numb at the time, and the feeling of you're not religious enough, you're not a believer, otherwise you would have trusted God with your problems. I've actually had someone walk to me and tell me to save up so that I can go to Nigeria and have demons exorcised from myself and my children. Otherwise, the spirit of death will keep hanging over us. I'm wondering if he died as a result of any other sickness. Would you tell me to go and exorcise demons? People who are sick from mental illness are told, stop taking your medication, look for a religious person to pray for you. It's time people realized that people are just sick, and no amount of praying it away will take away the sickness. You just need to take your medication, see your therapist, and of course seek higher power, because doctors treat, God heals, I understand that. But you cannot tell someone, stop taking your medication and go for prayer, and that is enough to actually heal you.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, Anne, we hear you, and I see Quinta and Peter shaking their heads in agreement. Quinta, what is a stigma that you faced due to facing and battling mental illness?
The stigma that came with it itself, because also at home, now that's my parents as well, they didn't quite get it because we believe, I think in the African context, we think mental illness can just be cured by going to church. Yeah, because I remember it reached a point where now I had to look for so many churches for them to intervene in my problem. But I came to realize that in addressing mental health, we need to look at a holistic approach, you know, the body, the mind, and the spirit. So there's so many needs. There's the emotional need, the spiritual need, the physical need that we all need to address. And I think when I started that, I started seeing the changes in my body and even in my relationships.
Wow. Peter, for you, what is the stigma that you've had to face?
Because during my period of addiction, we were not in terms with my dad, and most of the people just assumed that it's my dad who has cursed me. Like, oh, umerogwa tu, ama umelaaniwa. So that thing always kept me to, you know, I lost touch with my parents, kabisa, with especially my dad, because of people just believing and telling it to my face, well, the way you relate with your dad, amekulaani, you need to go and ask for forgiveness.
Okay, and it really boils down to awareness about mental illness, Daktari. Two things that are coming out, we lack awareness in as far as mental illness is concerned, and also the struggle of the boy child when it comes to mental illness. Talk about this.
Okay, just to add on to what they were saying about stigma. Yeah. And it's very interesting that the stigma is not only to the users of the system, it's also to us, the providers of the system. Like we go anywhere, I'd not meet Gladys in a social function and she'd say, oh, this is Dr. Nyamute, my psychiatrist. Well, she'll say, this is Dr. maybe Peter, my cardiologist. So for us, it starts also from even just the medical profession. There's just a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health, and yes, awareness on mental health issues, and just understanding that it's not for a select group of people. It can affect anyone, of any age, any religion. The other day we had an 11-year-old girl who committed suicide as a gift to the mother, who had told her she's the worst thing that ever. I mean, her life was. What were the words she used? Okay, I can't remember the exact words she used, but it's basically she was trying to tell her that my life became a mess ever since I got you. So she gave her that as a birthday gift. So, I mean, that's 11 years, 10 years, 9 years, we're having children committing suicide, even as old as 80, 90 years old. Religion doesn't discriminate, race, religion, sex, but yes, men commit suicide more. Sorry. Die by suicide more. More than women. And interestingly is women do attempt suicide more than men, but men use more lethal means, and therefore they end up being the ones who are successful, if we may use that term. So the thing with males, I think as a society we're all responsible. It stems down from as early as childhood, where a mother or father will tell the boy, don't cry. boys don't cry. Take it as a man. So you grow up knowing that men don't show emotions, men don't show weakness, men don't talk about these girl things, you know. So someone is going through a lot of difficulty, a lot of pain in their life, but they will not open up because they've been taught all through that men don't talk about these things. And the interesting thing is, even when they go to their pals, a lot of guys, maybe Peter can tell us, but a lot of guys would not have that space where they can go to their fellow friends who are men and tell them, this is what I'm going through. Many would rather open up to the females because they'll be a bit more open to listening and open to just understanding and being there to help in any way possible. So it's just that whole toxic masculinity, if we may call it. It's a space where we don't give men that liberty to talk about the emotions. So it's take it as a man and go with it. So even with the suicide, it's take it as a man, the most lethal way. Make sure you're successful at it because you're, I mean, it's you're trying not to fail at another thing.
Okay, yeah. Peter, you are even laughing about that. What does this resonate with?
It has just reminded me of the third attempt of suicide. I had to sit down and think through it thoroughly on how I'm going to do it and not fail. And and actually what I did was, so it was actually I sometimes I tell myself that I actually succeeded in it. It's only that God did not allow me to go.
Okay, I hear you. And it's interesting that you actually laugh about it today because you have come a long way in your healing journey, and we'll talk more about that. But just to drum home how everyone is susceptible to mental illness and death by suicide, in May of this year, the body of a journalist based in Molo was found hanging on a tree in Gatura Farm in Albagon, Nakuru County. Now, according to his mother, the 34-year-old and the firstborn son in a family of 5 had been battling depression. The mother eulogized him as an obedient, polite and disciplined son. Family and friends had been searching for him when he left home and never returned. His friends say he mostly kept to himself, and they say they were not aware that he needed help. Police launched investigations into the cause of his death, even though they intimated it could have been a case of suicide. So we have talked extensively about the causes and, of course, the various experiences for those that have joined us with lived experiences when it comes to suicide. Let's talk about prevention of suicide, and that's why September 10th is marked every year, even as we find more possible ways of preventing suicide. I'll start off with you, Quinta. For you, what has the journey been and what have you learned about yourself in all this?
Well, for me, it has been just getting a support system that really is there for you. And of course, seeking help when you want it. Speak out. Just speaking out will let others understand you the most. And those who are on medication or on therapy to continue talking to their psychologist or psychiatrist, because on this journey, it's lonely. And a number of times you're going to be alone with your thoughts. So you need to have a support system that is going to be accountable, to keep you in check, and of course you're going to not feel alone.
And for you, Peter, what works for you?
Yeah, it's also a support system. Like for me personally, I've had to look for men who understand this journey better. Because the problem is sometimes you go to speak to a guy who has been, or he doesn't know he's also undergoing something in mental health. So you are here, you are battling with you're a man, you know, those words were said so many times to you that you're a man, deal with your issues, you're a man, deal with your issues, and you're going to another man who has also been told the same words. So he will always offer you a solution that will befit him, and that, like for my case, most of the time was, Peter, let's go to a beer, I sort you out. let's go to a bar, sort you out, you know. That is it. So I've had to create a cycle of men who understand my journey better. Someone who I'll go with my issue too, and you'll have time to listen to it and not to judge.
And are most of these men people who also have lived experiences with other mental illnesses?
Yes. Pardon, repeat the question.
Is this other men who also have had experiences with mental illness?
Not necessarily. Because yeah, okay, the cycle is it's a combined with people who have lived with the experience and others, guys who have information about mental health. Because the biggest problem that we have is that the information is not yet, it's not out there. People don't understand when you talk about mental health, what are you talking about? So I've been very selective to look for guys who will understand, who have information about mental health, and some who have lived experience with mental health.
Which is very smart. And for you, Anne, most often than not, people forget about the caregiver, the person who walked with the loved one who passed on, and now they have to deal with their passing on and the impact of the same. How have you been coping?
I am a believer in nothing is ever wasted. Even the things that look grim and bad to other people, it's never a waste. And so I'm doing my best to use my experience, and I keep telling myself, if I can prevent any family from going through the trauma that my kids and I have gone through, then I would do anything for it. I must maybe take us back and tell people that once you have lost a person who has died by suicide, you're not expected to mourn. You're not expected to cry. You're not expected to show affection, and the burials are not as the other burials. I remember in my husband's funeral, the minister had to stand before people in the hearing of myself, my children, his mother, and his siblings, and tell them, this man killed himself. This man took his own life. So I'm like, would you... That really hurt me at the time, and I addressed it with the minister at the time. But you're not expected to mourn. And my friend who asked me, did he really love you? They assume that by the time someone dies by suicide, they don't really love the people they leave behind. And I must say that I have combed my house looking for a suicide note, and I have found none. So it's also expected that if someone is dying by suicide, they should have left you something to explain why it happened. But for those of us who have absolutely no explanation, we are left wondering how we should go on. But I have made it my mission to write. I write sometimes, so I have written some things about personal experiences. And I keep telling whoever cares to listen that it could happen to them. Nobody is immune to mental illness. Nobody is immune to suicide. And maybe I must also say that I have a support system of very good friends and very good family members who have always taken care of us. They would allow us to talk about it even when nobody wants to talk about it. They would allow you to express love to that person even in their absence. It's okay for me to talk with my friends about my husband and still say how much I love him even in death, how much I miss him. And I have also tried to create a space where my children are allowed to talk about their past. People assume that once someone has died, especially by suicide, you should take all the photos, hide them away, that you don't have that memory. But for me, talking about him, having my children express that, Mom, you know, I really miss my dad. I wish my dad was around. And having to tell them, it's okay, Mom, he's not around right now, but we believe he will also resurrect one day and you will hug your father. So a 5-year-old telling you they miss their father, and you have to tell them, it's okay, Dad will be here one day. And I must also appreciate my employer, who has also been very supportive. they were supportive during the treatment period. They paid our bills, and they are also supportive even right now. You would meet one of the HR guys who will ask you how you're doing. Your bosses will ask you how you're doing this far. So I thank God for the support in my heart.
Amazing, amazing. And we wish you even more peace even as you deal with this. And Daktari, the importance of a good support system cannot be overemphasized. Please talk about this and how best we can give support to those that have mental illnesses.
See, we humans cannot live in an island. You know, you can't say that I don't need people, I don't need friends, I don't need, because we all go through difficult moments. I mean, life has its challenges, sometimes for some people more than others. So having someone, or rather people, who you can go to whenever you're having this overwhelming feelings, someone you can just talk to, and sometimes maybe not to offer solutions, sometimes just to know that someone cares, someone understands me, someone feels, or rather they can try sort of to identify with how I'm feeling. It actually makes one feel cared for, loved, supported. So social support system can range from, it doesn't have to be, you see, for a lot of people they think if my family doesn't support me, I don't have a support system. It doesn't have to be purely family. It can be friends, it can be, like for Peter, people who have been through similar journeys.
A support group.
Yes,
yeah.
A support group. And that's usually very good as well, because you are with people who can relate with what you've gone through. You may not have the same story, but they can tell you, yeah, even me, I felt like that. And you know, you feel like, okay, I'm actually not going crazy. I'm actually not abnormal. I'm actually okay. And that in itself creates a sense of hope. And for suicide, see, the thing is, someone has just lost hope. Yeah. So if we can instill that hope, however small, however little, it can go so far. So support systems, wherever you can get it, as long as it's a healthy one. See, that's the thing. Because a lot of, there are people out there, you'll be like, I'm feeling this way, okay, let's go for a drink. I'm feeling this way, okay, let's go for a drink. You end up drinking, you end up not even talking about what you're going through. And once you, the drinking episodes are over, you're still faced with the exact same things that you were battling before, and
if
even maybe worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So healthy support groups with healthy activities, if we may call it. Yeah.
Okay. And when we come back from the break, I'd also want you to talk about the importance of having a good health infrastructure to support those living with mental illness. But I am told you're talking to us, even as we asked you that question of the day, what is the greatest challenge in accessing mental health care where you are? Somebody calling themselves Black Lives says, yeah, I'm from Mombasa, and in my area it's hard to access mental health care because we tend to believe that we're okay when our brothers are sick. It's witchcraft. We lack education on this issue. I'm certain that mass education will really help. Very true. That's why we are doing this awareness conversations. William says, I'm from Rongai, Nakuru. The challenge is drugs and alcohol has made everybody mentally sick in the area, so you're not able to tell who is sane to associate with, or you end up with the same problem. We hear you, William. Patrick Muturi says suicide is a disease that has got stages just like cancer. If one doesn't realize the behavioral changes or characters of a close family member or friend in the early stages, this person will have to die by suicide if he or she gets to the fourth stage. Hajir Malim says inadequate specialized staff in the field of mental health, lack of good and safe infrastructure to be handled with care. We hear you, Hajir, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. Abdisalam says there is no mental health care in Garissa County and the number of madness in our youth is increasing very fast. I'm sure you mean mental illness. We hear you, and we'll address that in a moment. Do we have any other? Abdallah Karim says suicide is clearly enshrined in elements of crime, so criminalizing it meant for deterrent measures rather than decriminalizing suicide. Well, Daktari will emphasize on the importance of decriminalizing, the same that was put across by the Mental Health Task Force that was put together by the government last year. Lusuli Joffrey says attempted suicide excuse me, should be treated with the highest level of care and understanding, must not be ridiculed or punished. We have Roberto Limor, who says, a shared story is a half-shared problem. Very true. It helps when people speak out of their challenges. Alice Wawero, yes, but it's good to try to maintain. I think I've been going through depression, but I'm trying to maintain, and God is always with me. Alice, we hear you on the positive attitude, but it also does help, as Daktari has said, and everybody else, to seek medical attention. We take another short break on Your World. We'll be back with more.
We bring you Jam Down, and you know, kama kawaida tunakupatia the best of reggae and dancehall music. So we give you the best of vibes mtaani. Na unajua pia mtu yangu, lazima tukupatie interviews from international countries. And you know I'm talking about Jamaica. This comes only on Jam Skype. But unajua pia show iezi malizika bila wenzetu. And I'm talking about Kaskala and more spice.
Wale wa radio Siwanga area Nation FM toka saa 1 hadi saa 4 tukuletea nothing but hot topics na mangoma kali kali, good music and good vibes. They call me MC Jawochi,
and they call me Miss Katiwa, from 10 p.m. up until midnight. Remember, the hashtag is JamDownKE right here on NTV.
Don't go nowhere.
By Nation Media Group brings you Celebrity Home Chef. This is a chance to nominate your favorite celebrity to get in the kitchen and showcase their cooking skills on TV. Simply head on to @Pishi254 on social media. Comment by tagging your favorite celebrity, and guess what? We might just make it happen. Tune in to NTV every Friday to catch the celebrity in action.
Fact Finder from the BBC.
Were these Chinese officials taking coronavirus victims for execution as claimed in this video? We went digging for the answers.
Will Ethiopia's new law curb the fake news menace in the East African nation? We hear from tech experts.
We'll also have tips on how you can spot a fake story online.
And are robots here to help, or will they take over the world? We find out.
Dad, Abu told me that his dad is retiring. What about you? Are you going to retire?
2020 showed us to never say never. Ensure your happiness with APA. Should never, ever happen.
It's time to kickstart your smart and give your brain a mega boost with DSTV. There's oodles of mind-blowing channels for kids young all together now. To get your knowledge workout, get connected to DSTV.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Let's take a look at the other world. Now, campaigners in Turkey distribute flyers in a bid to raise awareness as Turkey begins debating leaving the world's first treaty prosecuting femicide and domestic abuse. The 2011 Istanbul Convention requires governments to adopt legislation prosecuting such abuse, but Turkish conservatives who have been on the political ascent in the years since the treaty went into force say these laws hurt family unity and encourage divorce. Elsewhere, people living with disability in Jinotega, Nicaragua, receive kits of food and hygienic products to protect themselves against COVID-19 and to fight the spread of the virus. The national president of the Federation of Women with Different Capacities says throughout Nicaragua in the subsidiaries, we've had problems for 2 years, first due to the social-political situation and now with the situation of the pandemic. This has come to harm us more and to be in the homes as well. We've had some situations of violence, of stress, of women who have been tried or who have even tried to die by suicide, and this is something that is critical.
Sí. La mete en agua jabón bien.
Dozens of supporters of Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara gather in Paris to support his candidacy in forthcoming elections. The 78-year-old head of state is seeking a third term in the October 31st presidential poll. Massir Tofofana of supporters says since he became president of the Ivory Coast, we have not had a war or a massacre. He's someone who built the Ivory Coast. He made beautiful maternity hospitals for us women so that we can give birth. He built buildings, subways. He has achieved many things compared to those who came before him. To focus on health matters, a French man who is suffering from an incurable condition says he plans to live stream his death on social media as he refuses to take food, drink or medicine after President Emmanuel Macron turned down his request for euthanasia. Alain Coco, who suffers from a rare condition where the walls of the arteries stick together, said he believed he had less than a week to live and would live stream his death on Facebook from Saturday morning. He had written to Macron asking to be given a substance that would allow him to die in peace, but the president wrote back to him explaining this was not allowed under the French law. Coco, 57, has used his plight to draw attention to the situation of the terminally ill patients in France who are not allowed to die in line with their wishes. Back to our conversation of the day, which is suicide prevention. Again, as I said, we're within the Suicide Prevention Month, and the day is actually September 10th annually, where all stakeholders sit back and have this conversation on how best we can prevent suicide amongst our societies. And Dr. just thinking about this, why do you think this day is so important, and what are the things we need to actually look at or into?
I think the day is very important, particularly because suicide is a preventable death. Rather, most suicides are preventable. And instead of losing those people to something that can be prevented, what are the ways in which we can come up as a community, as a society, as the world to make sure we don't lose any more lives to suicide? And I think the main things, it's actually suicide awareness and prevention. So it's just the awareness is more to reduce the stigma associated with it. And I mean, as Anne has explained to us, the stigma also rolls down to even the caregivers and those who are related to a person who has attempted or has died by suicide. So just creating awareness: what is suicide? What what goes on in a suicidal brain, and also what are the prevention strategies, prevention for the individual, prevention for now the family and the relatives, because there's a risk of copycat suicides, there's a risk of the genetic risk as well, such that there's an increased risk when someone who has died by suicide for their family members also to die from the same. So it's just the whole creating awareness and the prevention strategies. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of the same, Quinta, from where you sit and what you do on a daily, why do we need to keep drumming in the importance of investing in suicide prevention?
Well, I must say this, we need to start investing in suicide prevention, because the people who take away lives are very resourceful people who could actually contribute to the progress of this economy or the country. So I think at an individual level, community level, and even the government, we need to start putting measures of how we are going to help these people who are suicidal or guys who are battling any mental illness. Working with the gender-based, the survivors of GBV, I realized one thing. These are survivors, but they're human beings, and they want to still do more for the country. So we as the people, we as the stakeholders, what are we doing? Have we put in place any measures to actually help them recover? You know, so I think it's high time where we start putting measures that are going to help these people. And also it's one thing to put in the measures and the other to make these measures available for them. So we need to start understanding, once we have these measures put in place, let the community know that they are existing, because so many of people, we have so many lines for suicide prevention and so many people still do not know. So when we start addressing suicide prevention from the grassroots levels, this is going to help us now tackle the real issues in the community.
And speaking of which, we talked about toll-free lines, and we know that the Red Cross has a toll-free hotline, which is 1199. We were also told by Quinta in Mombasa, the toll-free line there is 0800-720-587. And if you want to text instead, the number is 21094. The reason why we're giving these numbers is because the first step to prevention is you speaking about it and somebody listening to you. If that is what needs to be done at the moment you need that help, you can get somebody at the end of this line. Peter, what from your experience would be ideal to support those with mental illness to ensure they never go down that road of suicide attempt?
For me, I think the society needs to be informed about the issues that guys are going through, and by information is that the public needs to, especially the family members, they need to acknowledge that it's okay not to be okay. And the same way we treat physical health is the same way we need to treat mental health. With that kind of information, it's easy to help someone who is undergoing depression. Because most of the time, like for my case, all I needed was someone to listen to me. I was not expecting for someone to give me a solution to my problem, but just a platform for me, a safe space for me to speak out my issues. Because that was the beginning of me actually healing. So if that information can be passed out to the public, and it's going to really help in prevention of suicide.
Creating awareness, creating awareness. And for you, Anne, sitting from a caregiver's point of view, what is lacking in the system?
The first thing is an understanding that someone suffering mental illness, for instance, depression, they are not lazy. It's not like they don't want to work, but they just can't work. Some mornings they wake up, they had planned to go to work, they had ironed their clothes, they were going to work. But just because they woke up in a very depressed state that day, they are not able to work. So it's important for employers to understand, what kind of help am I going to give to my employee who is sick? What kind of help am I going to give to a caregiver who's taking care of a sick employee, a mentally ill patient? And it's important for some people. I think when we start the support from the understanding bit, that understand that this person is unwell and that's why they couldn't come to work. And the other thing that can be done is, please, the general public, mental illness is not contagious. So if you come to me and maybe you're talking to me, sitakuambukiza widowhood by suicide. You know, it's like you're isolated. People assume that is the lady whose husband died by suicide. I shouldn't talk to her anymore. I shouldn't walk with her anymore. Is that a patient who's mentally ill? Then I need to avoid them. Mental illness does not get to you by contact. So let's just embrace people who are mentally ill and their families and give them adequate support that they need. I must also confess that Taita Taveta has a referral hospital, but that referral hospital does not have a psychiatrist. I had to go all the way to Mombasa to get help. I managed, maybe because I had a few coins. How many people are here suffering and they just can't afford? They can't afford the transport costs, they can't afford the drugs. So what can the government do to bring these services closer to Mwananchi who is suffering but does not have the help that they need? And maybe another thing that the general public needs to know, please don't feel sorry for us. Don't feel sorry for family. The sorry of Woishe, it's like you pity them. Just that empowerment in you talking about it. And maybe last.
Okay, I think we have lost Anne, but she will be back in a moment. And Daktari, she brought up something that came up in the comments earlier, that people need help, but the places to get help are few and far between. And she's also mentioned healthcare providers, psychiatrists are very few in this country.
Yeah, Gladys, it's just the state of mental health in our country has been in a very sorry state for a very long time. Currently, we only have one referral hospital for mental illnesses in the whole country, and that's Mathare. Mathare itself is already swamped, extremely swamped. The other thing is, I think it was mentioned earlier, we have only just above half of the counties having psychiatrists or having mental health units, working mental health units for that matter. So it's very difficult for the common Mwananchi down at Garissa to access mental health care. So it all stems down from simple things like budgeting. Okay, it's not simple, it's very complex, but budgeting, mental health financing, it's the mental health budget has been 1% or less than 1% for a very long time. So getting mental health units working on the ground is very difficult. Healthcare personnel also is, has been wanting with just slightly above 100 psychiatrists currently in the country serving our current population. The psychologists as well are not as many, but the thing is, as we need to take responsibility as a country, because we are having trained personnel who are not being employed as well by the government, or there's a space for employment, but the kind of environments, or rather the atmosphere is not conducive. And I think those are the things that are making it a bit difficult to sort of build the healthcare system. But I think with the primary healthcare, integrating mental health into the primary healthcare, and as well as the mental health task force that has been launched, and the president has been quite engaging with this mental health issue, especially during this COVID period, I think we're taking some steps. The only hope is we can maintain the pace.
Okay,
Yeah.
and speaking of which, somebody said the other deterrent to accessing mental health care is the cost.
Yeah.
How can we help Kenyans?
At the end of the day, you see, cost of healthcare, there's the users out of pocket, but there's also the bit where the government financing reduces on that expenditure. So again, stems back to making these noises that we keep making, mental health, so that people out there can lobby for, let's increase the amount that we are giving to Mathare Hospital so that we can maybe build more space so that if I go to Mathare right now at outpatient, I don't find 6-7 patients waiting to see the doctor because there's no space for another doctor to sit to be able to help with that. So it's to increase the financing so that we can be able to expand the facilities that we have or even create new facilities, train more professionals and actually absorb them and hire them so that they're not being absorbed in our neighboring countries or abroad. Yeah.
Okay, and at that point, I think I need to still reiterate those numbers that we shared with you earlier. If you are in mental distress or know somebody who is struggling with the same, there is a toll-free number that is manned by the Red Cross. It is 1199, and you can call it anytime. And if you are in Mombasa, there is another toll-free line, 0800-720-587, and if you prefer to text, it is 21094. We were talking about suicide prevention this morning. Thank you to all who joined me on this conversation, and thank you for being so candid about your own journeys, because it is out of it that we learn and we understand the gaps in the system. Now tomorrow, Joseph Warungu has a real conversation with a number of young people. They will discuss their lives 7 months into the pandemic and their education situation, the impact of being at home this long, and plans for their future at this time, among others. Tune in from 7 a.m. See you then.